Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Normally I'd have the soundboard, but we don't have access to that right now, unfortunately, which also means no skull chant. But this is the Parliament of Geeks, where we ask and answer one simple question. Be it weeb or be it scrub. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have two of my good brothers here in the temple. In the blue corner, our flamboyant flyer, good brother Flutter. And
You
what,
wouldn't mind
right?
saying that again?
Yeah, good brother Flutter. I don't know why that came out that way.
He had a stroke, people, don't worry.
I don't have strokes. Unless I'm rowing.
Hmm.
And the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadari Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Zadari Enterprises would like to remind you that comparing stories to Harry Potter is lazy criticism, and you should not do that because if you do, you are showing how much of a hack you are. It's also bad actor type arguments. So don't do that. Also, I'm not going to name names, but the person who compared Harry Potter to all of Terry Pratchett's bibliography, cut off your hands and stop typing.
Is this a leave your heads there moment?
Just their hands. I want them to suffer, Monk. Remember, you can only kill them once.
Well, speaking of ridiculous punishments, so this week's episode is the fastest turnaround we've had because we were only covering an OVA that was 3 episodes. Like normally we try to go for 12, but since it landed on this, it was going to be quicker. Normally it's like a month before we get to the next episode. This was just a special case. Because I have stand the works of Nagai and Ishikawa in this house. We did an entire episode of Geek Watch dedicated to folks like that. And how their work gets sidelined by a lot of fucking tourists who think that Mecha was a glorified toy commercial until 1979 with Mobile Suit Gundam. Even though you look at the actual history books, and that is not the case. And we've discussed why, but of course one of these stalwarts is Mazinger Z. In fact, I'd say one of the godfather of the super robot as we know it. I know some people will say that should go to Tetsujin 28. Tetsujin 28 was remote controlled.
Yeah, we're talking about pilot inside robot type robotics.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that Go Nagai and Ken Ishikawa definitely stood up super robots with their two their two grand entries that are the progenitors of some of the best tropes in mecha.
Yeah, and Skull isn't trying to be one of the best or anything like that. It was kind of a spin-off of the recently released Mazinkaiser, which the anime series for that, or rather it was originally an OVA, was back in 2002, and then they decided to follow it up in 2010 with Mazinkaiser Skull. This was a 3-episode OVA series, and while there isn't really a setup of some sort of anniversary thing, which I thought that it was done to do some sort of anniversary thing, but the date doesn't match up. Like, it was released between November 27th, 2010 and April 7th, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
There was a manga around the same time that was also 3 volumes. I can't speak too much on the manga because I never read that. Uh, the only thing that I do know is that it was one of an early adopters of the idea of manga on the phone, since it was on a mobile phone setup. But the big reason why why I thought this was a some sort of anniversary or celebration project is the sheer number of callbacks and references throughout this OVA.
Yeah, there are a clear amount of callbacks, and my comment has always been, I just think that this was an excuse for Go Nagai to throw Ryoma and Hayato into a Mazinkaiser.
That's certainly a possibility. I mean, it was originally screened, the or at least the first episode was screened at Anime Fez VS, which was put out there by Bandai Visual.
Mm-hmm.
There, and apparently there's also a novelization of the series. I wonder how much they added to that to make it a full-on novel. Because this is not a deep story kind of OVA. This is a turn your brain off and have some popcorn kind of OVA.
Oh,
Yep.
absolutely.
Now, a 3-volume manga, okay, I could definitely see taking the OVA episodes and putting them in manga volumes. And when when it comes to this particular series, uh, I think it's important that we go into who was involved. Obviously, future planning was involved in the production because that's going to be involved in anything Mazinger or Getter related. But the director was Jun Kawagoe,
Yep.
who's got who has certainly worked with Nagai, Ishikawa, Yanase, and a couple times Ishinomori.
Considering the fact that he did all the later episodes of Robo Armageddon, all of Shin versus Neo, New Robo in 2004,
Cyborg 009 in 2001, and
Super Robot Wars Original Generation, the animation in 2005. Oh, and Arc, Robo Arc now, just so
and
everybody knows that.
Kotetsushin Jig.
A lot of recognizable shit here.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest.
Along with Innocent Venus, which I remember a lot of people talking about, but I haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
There was also Transformers Energon, or in Japan Transformers Super Link, but I'm not going to hold that against him. The Unicron trilogy is messy. And there was also one Lupin work in Operation Return the Treasure.
Mm-hmm.
And the X Driver OAVs back in 2000. So had quite a bit of a background.
Looking at that overlap with Actus, which is the primary studio for this, which is under Bandai Namco Filmworks as a subsidiary,
Yeah,
it doesn't surprise me that a lot of what he did is familiar, because a lot of what he did is also a lot of what they've worked on.
Yeah. The writing was handled by Tadashi Hayakawa, who's as far as writers that we've talked about, doesn't have a lengthy background, but definitely has some work to his name. A lot of it was either script or some screenplay and series composition, usually for a few episodes here and there. Including including 5 episodes of 5Ds. About 7 episodes, doing script work for 7 episodes of Robots in Disguise. The Mazinger Edition Z, The Impact, though it says publicity, so what that means, take it with a grain of salt. And was series composition and script for the first 13 episodes of Get a Robo Arc. Although wasn't Arc 13 episodes?
Yes. It
So
was the whole thing about
I don't know why they wrote episodes 1 through 13 instead of just saying the whole thing. But yeah, it's a fairly decent amount of material there. along with a bunch of art projects all over the place. Unless I'm dealing with 2 people with the same name, because I did find it kind of confusing when there's a list when it came to anime works and apparently fine art.
See.
Now, this is what normally when it comes to these sort of things, we try and check if it's available on a streaming service or in a reasonable physical version. It is available in Retro Crush, but the reason we couldn't find it at first was because instead of doing it as individual episodes, it was combined into one movie. And when there's that sort of combination, there's the possibility of cuts. I haven't seen that version, and that's not the one we ended up watching. We watched the OVAs. It is possible that they just ran all 3 back to back, but I don't know that. So if you watch it on Retro Crush, it's a at your own risk kind of thing.
Yo.
But the setup has to do with a place called Machine Island, which is occupied by 3 factions: Garan, Kiba, and Octagon.
Yep. Which Hachiryo-kaku literally translates to octagon, so it fits.
And this is essentially a prison island that's maintained by a device called a gravity curtain.
Basically, if you try to leave, you get crushed. Literally.
And requires specific tech to even get in.
Well, I think the intent was you never would get in.
That was the intent,
out.
but unfortunately, the setup is that a flaw was revealed, and if the gravity curtain isn't shut down in the next 66 hours, then it's going to get unstable and pretty much fuck over the whole planet.
Some sort of graviton wave collapse that causes the entire planet to have sudden catastrophic disasters. Which, you know, that's actually the first reference that I didn't point out to anybody, and I was wondering if anybody would get.
I think I caught on to it, but moment was past.
What do you think the reference was?
I mean, I had it, but then I lost it.
It is the gravitational disasters that occur at the end of Gao-Gaigar TV, because the not Gao-Gaigar TV, Gao-Gaigar Final, excuse me, because the 11 Masters of Soul are consuming the dark matter and dark energy from our universe to restore the universe that once held the trinary star system. The whole gravity causing massive disasters on a scale never seen before is probably been everywhere else in sci-fi, but for this, it's a Gao-Gaigar reference. It has to be.
It could be that somebody was swapping notes. I mean, you did have a fair few references to other works in Gao-Gaigar itself. But the in order to try and solve the issue, a unit of the sorry, I don't know why my throat got so scratchy like that. A unit of the military known as the Skull Force is sent in, and a subunit was sent in advance called the Death Caprice Squad.
The Death Caprice Squad has a, shall we say, infamous notoriety amongst the Skull Force.
Namely that it's only 2 members. They tend to be the only people who come back whenever they're sent into any kind of action.
Yep.
Which causes everybody else to look at them like a bad omen.
Basically, they'll get everyone else killed.
They will take out the enemy. They'll just take out the allies as well. And we lost Flutter.
He'll probably come back.
Mm-hmm.
But the entire point of this setup is to get the idea across that the Death Caprice Squad is a 2-man wrecking crew that you don't really need much for. So this new squad that's being sent in, known as the I believe it's Crimson Falcon Squad or Crimson Eagle Squad.
Yeah, Crimson Falcon.
I was right the first time. Yeah. Knows that all they're there to do is drop off some cargo and fucking leave.
Mm-hmm. Which, and under normal circumstances, that'd be perfectly fine. Just a standard milk run. But you know why it's just a milk run is used almost like a curse.
Yep.
Because one, it's never just a milk run. 2, first casualty is always the plan.
Yep.
But because of that, even though getting past the curtain is done without a hitch, right as soon as they're on the other side, they get killed by stray bullets from a fight. Well, all but one of them.
Yeah. All but one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Tsubasa Yuki. And I pointed out to everybody that Yuki was the code name used by Kay in Get a Robo Armageddon when she was being disguised as a little boy. So, like, more callbacks.
Mm-hmm.
She's forced to steal a very conspicuous pile dirt to even escape the wreckage of this cargo plane cargo ship.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to note one other thing, because the island has a lot of resources, and because of that, has a lot of factories for making a near infinite supply of mechs.
Yep. And the 3 different forces are using those robot factories to remake robots constantly.
And even the mechs that they end up making are callbacks.
I mean, we see some piloted versions of Dubless, and Dubless and I believe it's Garada.
Oh yeah.
2 of the most iconic early Mazinger, who later become cannon fodder.
Mm-hmm. And one of them is based on the Garada, one of them based on the Dubless, and having more or less the same design.
Yep.
The Garan faction has a mass-produced mech that is meant to channel the Kingdom X10.
Yep. Whereas the one faction that doesn't have a robot that's too much of a callback is the Octagon.
one could say the Psycho Gears are callbacks to like Aphrodite A. That's admittedly a bit of a stretch.
That's way too much of a stretch.
If anything,
They don't
I'd
even
say,
have boob missiles, Monk.
If anything, I'd say the entirety of the Octagon wants to be more of a callback to Cutie Honey, if anything else.
Well, their names certainly are, but the queen of the Octagon is actually a character that is the exact same name and design in God Mazinger.
Mm-hmm. So there's certainly that, but the first episode deals with a couple skirmishes and introduces Kiba,
And kills him just as quick.
Yep, and of course, we can't avoid him. It's another case where we're watching an anime with Nobuyuki Hiyama.
The King of Screams himself, everybody. Remember that's his official title ever since Gao Geiger.
And it's also where, a little ways into it, we get introduced to both Mazinkaiser's skull and its two pilots, Ken Kaido and Ryo Magami. Kaido is what would happen if I guess Koji decided to snap one day, and Ryo, it could be argued has the hairstyle of Duke.
He does have the hairstyle of Duke.
But what's even more amusing is their code names: Amon 6 and Lucifer 4.
Devilman references.
Not just Devilman references, but a little bit on the nose with the numbering.
6 for the devil and 4 for death.
Well, I'd say it's more of the fact that, if I recall correctly, 6 used to be Shichi.
No, 7
7
used to be
was.
Shichi.
Yeah.
And is still used as Shichi at certain times.
4 nowadays it has for the longest time been Yon, but when I was first studying, it was Shi.
It still is she. It depends on context.
Yeah.
They use either reading interchangeably. They're not nearly as superstitious about it as they used to be.
Yeah, but obviously the reason why, part of the reason, there's a bunch of reasons why, but one of them is, she being associated with death.
Well, that's because that's the primary pronunciation for the kanji for death.
Mm-hmm.
Shi. No, like I said, 6 for the devil, 4 for death.
Mm-hmm. And Mazinger is referred to as a demon.
Yep.
Although I'd say the Mazingers over the years have been less what people would assume is demonic compared to, say, Getters over the years.
The thing I always like to point out when people start making this point is that Mazinger was never intended to just be a demon. The whole thing with that particular through line in Mazinger, as lore, not just Mazinger Z itself, is that Koji's grandfather, the one who designed all of the Mazingers in the original lore, said that these machines could be the devil, and it would depend on the pilot.
Yeah,
and in some of the later works, some of the works that reimagine or were side works, such as Shin Mazinger Z, that was a worry that Koji Kabuto had, that he didn't know if he was strong enough to prevent Mazinger from becoming a devil. But returning to Ryo and Ken, I like to point out that Ken, being the sword wielding badass, is just Ryoma Nagare in another body. And Ryo, being the gun-wielding cool man with a little bit of a psycho streak, is Hayato in another body. Where's Benkei or Musashi, you might be asking? They don't need a grounding force because they're not piloting a getter.
That, and I guess one could argue Kiba's original mech is the closest thing to Musashi that we'd get. That's a massive ass stretch, but
I mean, it does have treads, but he can jump out of it too, which is kind of weird.
But Kiba's design was based on one of Go Nagai's old mangas, Zuba the Barbarian.
Yep. Which then spread down to his troops looking like, Hokuto no Ken characters.
Yeah.
At least raiders in Hokuto no Ken.
Raiders, and if we want to go to all the way to the source, Mad Max characters, because Jesus Christ, how many things Mad Max has influenced over the years indirectly.
Yep.
From anime to manga to video games to even wrestling. Like one of Kane's old gimmicks when he was still, Glenn Jacobs, when he was still in the USWA, was I forget the name of the character, but it was blatantly a ripoff of Lord Humongous.
Not surprising.
Master Blaster, that's what it was called. That's probably one of the more dignified characters he played in that promotion. The other one being the Christmas Creature, which is exactly what you think it is.
Yep.
I think at one point he really didn't like talking about that, and I can't blame him. But one of the primary gimmicks that is introduced with Mazinkaiser's skull, aside from the fact that it seems to be able to rise up out of the ground from anywhere on the island. Where the hell were they hiding that? I think the only other mech that has a similar level of appearing from out of anywhere is probably Big O.
It's absolutely a Big O reference.
Although at least Big O gave the excuse of there was a train network under the city.
Yep, so he can only rise in places where the train tracks go. That's not true. You've had him rise in places where there would clearly be no train tracks. Mm-hmm. Fuck you, Roger.
You know, at the very least, give G Gundam some credit for the whole launching the mechs from space kind of thing.
Will always give G Gundam the most respect for the God Gundam going from the Guyana Highlands to Hong Kong by boosting into space, using the laser barrier that prevents Gundams from getting back out to space as fucking ropes. Like in a fucking ring to boost itself back.
You know, run the ropes in 3 strides, then drop down, get it again. You know how this works.
I will always give G Gundam the credit for the fucking sheer absurd awesomeness.
Mm-hmm. Look, the way I see it, if you're gonna be stupid, don't half-ass it.
Who says it was stupid? If it's stupid and it works, Monk.
It's not stupid.
Thank you.
But one of the main gimmicks with Mazinkaiser's skull itself has to do with the switching when it comes to pilot control. Whenever melee combat is the focus, Ken is in the pilot seat. Whenever range combat is the focus, Ryo is in the pilot seat. The idea being that they are switching between who's in the front and who's in the back. But it is also revealed. It was also revealed that part of the reason the thing is in this kind of unstable condition is the fact that Kiba and Garen's armies are using far more power than Octagon is.
They're using their robot factories with much more heavy usage,
mm-hmm.
because they constantly fight their wars. all the Octagon really does is protect itself from these two idiots. Oh, another thing I'd like to point out: the switching of the cockpit to who's in control for doing what. Some will say, "Oh yeah, that's just Getter." Well, no, because the cockpits were all separate and they reconfigured the entire robot. This is specifically another connection to a universe Gal Gaigar is in. This is a connection to Better Man. Fuck you if you think it's not, because go watch how any of the neuronoids work.
You have
the
control.
Need for dual kinds. I have control. Oh, do I have control? Which one of them is the head diver and which one of them is the womb diver? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's... Look, you dig around in a lot of these, especially since a lot of the mech pioneers were friends with each other. You're going to find these little callbacks.
This is just Go Nagai going, I love giant robots.
Mm-hmm. There... Now, there was... in the second episode, that's where the Garan army gets far more focus. Especially Garan himself, who has an appearance that kept making me think of Guan Yu, and a personality that made me think of Nobunaga.
And
welcome back, Flutter.
And to me, his appearance, his gravitas, his attitude, all of it was like, hello, Onkoku Daishogun.
Hmm.
Or, I mean, Onkoku Daishogun. I mean, Onkoku Daishogun. I mean, it's just the great general of the dark. Okay?
And I know some have said that the fortress that he has is modeled after feudal Japan. I don't see it. I see far more of China than I do Japan out of that setup.
Agreed.
Unless I'm, what do you think? Am I off base on that?
You know, let me go look at it again for a second. I think that you could argue either way.
It is probably a case of 50-50 because you deal with a lot of that mixing when we're dealing with pop culture coming out of East Asia, as I've talked about in the past.
Yep. But we also see that Garan is assisted by a woman who has super secret psychic powers like all the other women on the island seem to have.
Mm-hmm.
Named Himiko, which I pointed out and laughed at when we first heard her name. Because for those who don't know, Himiko is one of the folklore empresses of Japan. Like, she actually was an empress of Japan at one point. It's just that the folklore surrounding her is she was a fucking fortune teller, but not like a hokey, I'm ripping you off for money fortune teller. I can see the future oracle.
Yeah.
So I was like, working for someone she believes to be the best for the ruler of all mankind and named Himiko, they're just using her as an oracle for him. But she's also based off of the Slum Queen, at least her design is.
Mm-hmm.
Who, again, for those who don't know, that's from Violence Jack. Yes, there's even more references to Go Nagai's own works in this.
Yeah, and just for reference for you Flutter, here's an appearance of Slum Queen from the manga. I'm gonna put this in Parliament.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And well, at least one of these Slum Queens in Violence Jack was a psychic.
Yeah.
But
so, I mean,
if it fits, it sits.
Mm-hmm.
But the second episode is more of a setup for a couple things. One of them is the fact that Garan isn't as easy of a fight, and two, he ends up pressing Ryo's berserk button by talking about fate.
Not just fate, but as he comes to a realization about something about Ryo, he starts not just pressing Ryo's berserk button, but Ryo's shutdown button. Starts giving him the heroic BSOD there.
Mm-hmm.
But we also get to see yet another Getter reference when Ryo takes the two blaster pistols that are on Mazinkaiser Skull's chest,
Mm-hmm.
which when they're loaded on the chest, they look like Devilman's face. I just thought I'd point that out.
Mm-hmm.
But he takes them off and combines them, and then they become a giant tomahawk. I was like, hey, there's Shin Getter's tomahawk. But in this case, you wouldn't say Getter Tomahawk. You would instead say Kaiser Tomahawk. Yes, I practice lines from mecha shows. Shut the fuck up and stop looking at me in that tone of voice.
But the other thing that's kind of set up is the fact that Kiba not quite dead, though definitely was seeing better days.
Yep. And then the third part that was set up was that ostentatious piled or tight thing that Yuki had taken actually has a body to attach to it, and she needs to go retrieve it.
Mm-hmm. It was in the cargo of that ship, which would certainly fit because because for what looked like a squad of about 12 people, that ship was way too big.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did say that they were dropping off cargo for the Death Caprice, so.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of episode 2, we see Kiba sneaking up on Himiko. We see Ryo defeated by Garen and, well, Ken, because Ken punches him in the face and says, "Let me take over, you idiot!"
Mm-hmm.
And they get knocked into a chasm. And we see the Octagon army having trouble with Garen's forces. And then, well, Yuki shows up in episode 3 to save the Octagon's shit with Wingle. Wingle is your typical Mazinger fembot. She absolutely is a la Aphrodite Ace or Venus Ace or Diana Ace.
Or
but
Minerva
of course,
X.
Or Minerva X.
And
Or
a little bit of Devil Lady.
A lot of bit of Devil Lady.
Because Go Nagai does not want anyone to forget about Devil Lady.
Devil Lady was surely a trip. I recommend anyone read it or watch it.
Both of them are trips for different reasons.
Yes, but they should do so regardless. And of course, the first thing she does is pull a sword out of her boob, because you can't have an Aphrodite bot without boob weapons of some sort.
Yeah, although I do have to wonder if the choice to go with what I've seen some people call it a flail. That don't fucking lie to me. That's a retractable foil.
Well, it was a foil in the OVA. I'm pretty sure it's a flail in the manga.
I think a foil works better for the aesthetic. Oh.
Works better for the aesthetic, but it doesn't make sense how she'd pull it out of there. A foil is longer than the body of Wingle is thick, despite the fact of her having nice luscious breasts. You don't have enough space for a foil in there. However, there's plenty of space to open up the boobie, pull out a handle with an attached chain, and then an entire ball. That would fit perfectly in a boobie.
Yeah. That being said, the third episode is one giant protracted fight because, well, for starters, the time is starting to run out. And to make things even worse, the rig reason why Kiba attacked
Himiko.
I don't know why the name escaped me for that moment. was to acquire a weapon that was hidden under the island. That being Mazinkaiser, which the design of that, I believe, was based on one of the guy's other works, Shuten Doji.
Loosely, it's not a good one-to-one compared to some of the other robots in this in this OVA and manga.
Mm-hmm.
It's loosely based, but the big thing is that Mazinkaiser has a gravity engine that is almost exactly the same as the gravity engine running the gravity curtain, which is why the gravity curtain starts going fucking haywire, and the 66 hours that they'd lost like 30 hours of already suddenly shrunk down to minutes. It's like, oh, some bastard with the power to basically turn off the fucking gravity engines that are keeping this place under wraps popped out. It was no good at all.
A solution is brought up through a couple things. One, we do get to see the famous wing cross, which if you're going to be doing a Mazinger series, you kind of have to have that.
Yeah, the entire reason Wingle exists is as a support unit for Mazinkaiser Skull. The large, very large, wings that are part of her head, which again, reference to Devil Lady, detach to become, well, Mazinkaiser Skull's Scrander. And then we have the wing cross with the Wingle Scrander.
Mm-hmm. But the bigger thing is a solution is given by essentially trying to destroy the gravity curtain's main power source and Mazinkaiser at the same time.
Yep, because Mazinkaiser has the same engine. Two equal and opposite resonances cancel each other out.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is you'll have to go straight to the center of that thing, guys. It's a suicide run. And they're like, ha 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 ha, everything we do is a suicide run. Because we are not on the road to hell, we are hell itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's good shit.
And the other thing in that fight is it's definitely one that runs the gamut, including making a few other nods to some of the other famous Mazinger finishes or special moves that you'd see throughout the series.
They had every one of the of Mazinger or Mazinkaiser specifically's moves. They had the Turbo Smasher Punch. They had the Rust Hurricane. They even at the very fucking end had the Thunder Break and the goddamn Fire Blaster.
Mm-hmm. Even if some of them were under different, the setup for all of them was pretty much there.
Yes. I just love the fact that they would use the Turbo Smasher Punch to shoot off the fucking sword.
That was a bit of creativeness.
That was a bit of badassness.
In the aftermath of it, after even with a few disasters and one random cameo by the actual Devilman, we had a bit of a post credits moment wherein Yuki, who's I guess has been promoted to captain of the Skull Force since all the others were dead.
Yep.
Ends up dropping off the Death Caprice squad in what looks like a mecha motorcycle that transforms into a horse with bone wings on it.
That's just a G Gundam ripoff of Fun Psyche. I mean, Fun Psyche turns into a flying UFO platform, but same feel.
Mm-hmm.
But also, they have a lance now as well. As a lance as well as their sword.
A sword which already had an extendable handle as it was. So.
Yep, and guns that turn into a tomahawk.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of killy parts. We'll just leave it that way.
Yeah, but that more or less covers the base. If I were to really nitpick, There are a couple spots in episode 2 where some animation got reused, but as somebody who got his start in the 90s, I'm used to reused cells.
These are digital cells too, so it doesn't even.
Yeah, and something that's important to note is even by the time of 2010, a lot of studios were still getting used to the whole digipaint thing and using digital tools.
Yep.
So it's not something I'm gonna hold against. I will say that by 2010, most studios had gotten it down, and it's even though I say cell reuse, it's not like it's Sailor Moon level of cell reuse. Look, I know some of the Moonites will get, or Moonies or whatever, are gonna get on me, but you know I'm right. You know the original anime is still one of the most blatant animation reuse abusers.
But the original anime was also made during a time where those shortcuts were necessary due to terrible budgets.
Oh, I'm fully aware. It's just one of those things where if you've watched enough anime, then cell reuse is something that you should be on some level used to,
Yeah.
because it's gonna happen,
Yeah.
especially when the budget has to be saved for those Sakuga moments.
Of which Mazinkaiser Skull is almost entirely made of. So
Yeah.
We have a budget. Let's blow it in 3 episodes. Why?
Mhm.
Because we can make the most Sakuga ever.
Yeah.
Ah.
Now, with that said, as for admittedly, this is very much a popcorn movie of a 3-episode series. This is not something that's meant to have a lengthy, detailed plot. And I know some might say, wait, why would you be watching something like this for a deep plot? And to which I say, go back to your art house shit. The point is that this is very much the mecha equivalent of a popcorn flick, and it knows it.
There's nothing wrong with that either.
No, but it is something that you have to be aware of coming into this. I've seen some people regard Skull as too edgy, which, if you really think that, then you most definitely are new when it comes to Go Nagai, or you're too self-conscious.
If you think Mazinkaiser Skull is edgy, then you don't know Dark Schneider.
I even remember some people referring to Mazinkaiser Skull as chuny, and I'm like, no.
Absolutely not.
I mean, I've talked about this before, but terms like that have gotten kind of flanderized over the years.
Yep. They
But-
have indeed.
And if it seems like I'm stretching when it comes to this particular episode, admittedly it's because there isn't a whole lot to really dissect in this one. It's not a character piece, it's a popcorn flick. There's a reason why a lot of reviewers tend to avoid going into detail with, say, comedies. It's in that same principle.
What we can do, however, is talk about our vaunted audio identity.
Oh, yes.
This is a metal audio identity through and through, even having stalwarts in the Japanese metal scene, Loudness, perform the theme song.
Loudness performs the opening, the Eternal Soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sadie, a visual K rock band, performs the ending, Juggernaut. And then, of course, there's that massively awesome Legend of Kaiser insert song in the last episode, performed by Ray, who described themselves as Honki no Anison Bando, or the real Anison band. And, of course, the band's name comes from, well, everyone should know this name, Hironobu Kageyama's band, Lazy, and of course the character Rei Ayanami.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a bunch of heavy hitters here when it comes to theme songs, and so of course we played them every fucking episode. No, you're not skipping that shit, and if you try, I might stab you. But the actual sounds in show, much like most of the Go Nagai works I've ever watched, are massively satisfying. Satisfying crunches, satisfying blasts, satisfying slashes, satisfying flight. All the sounds are exactly like you would want to hear from giant robots meant to fuck shit up.
Mm-hmm.
And all is right with the world. If more people liked mecha, this world would have peace. I'm gonna say that right now.
I'd say if more people would stop thinking that they need to be cool and act like they are immune to a mecha fight.
No one is immune to giant robots fighting. No one.
You are not immune to Earth Federation propaganda.
Something like that.
But with that said, and I know this is a shorter episode, but like I said, it's hard to dissect this. It is time for us to render our final judgments.
All right. Well, I will note that one of our good brothers who was unfortunately unable to join us for this particular deliberation, personal circumstances, but did watch it with us. Brother Akira Coops has his own assessment of Mazinkaiser Skull. To quote him, he'd already heard of Mazinger/Mazinkaiser from the amount of discussions both in Discord and on Twitex. He just hadn't dedicated time to watch any of it. After watching Skull, he really feels he needs to get on it. He loves the action, the animation, and the two protagonists. All of the show was packaged in one hell of a medium-rare steak filled with testosterone. While short, he enjoyed what he watched and will watch it again for the action alone. The Waifu Hunter gives Mazinkaiser Skull a rating of weeb and a waifu score of 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
His own personal additions to every one of our little deliberations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Brother Coops gives a vote of weeb. Brother Flutter, what have you got for me?
This is, like Mildred said, very much a popcorn flick OVA that you just turn your brain off, shut up and watch, and well, I don't want to say shut up and watch, but riff along at times and watch. The animation and fight scenes are great. The audio identity is amazing. Characters are very likable and enjoyable. I can't give this any higher than Weep.
All right. And now we have 2 votes of weeb. Monk, what are we looking at?
This, if I didn't know any better, I would have assumed this was some sort of anniversary project. Now, everything I've been able to find tells me that it isn't, but the reason I could have sworn that it was largely has to do with the fact that so much of what we have here is some sort of callback or some sort of nod to previous works from Go Nagai. And obviously his hand was involved. I mean, anything with Mazinger or Getter is going to have future planning involved in some form. That being his particular production company. And the only real nitpick I can have is a couple moments of reused cells, and like I said, those are easily worked around. But it very much knows what it is and does not shy away from that one bit. Those who are more self-conscious about your anime, please stay away. But if you're more self-conscious about your anime, then you're probably not even watching anime. You're probably just watching whatever Giga puts out, and calling yourself an anime fan after that. By the way, Giga, you're still wrong, and you will always be wrong for that bad take all those years ago. I'm not letting that go.
We never will. Well, with that, we have 3 votes of weeb. And I don't know if I lost the monk or not.
No, I'm still here.
Okay, good. He just went silent and then stopped, and I was like, As for my own rating, this is a game of catch the reference, and as the resident Mecha Master here, references galore. I get to revel in all of it and watch it come together in a glorious, chaotic whole. We have a fantastic OST, especially in the opening, ending, and insert songs. As I already talked about, the sound identity, especially all of the sounds for any parts of mecha combat, are fully satisfying and make you think that all is right with giant robots. Our voice cast are definitely insane. All of them. I don't care which person you're talking about. Even Yuki, despite being the straight man of the entire show, is insane. They all are. And that fits Skull. That fits Mazinkaiser Skull. Little bit of background for those who don't know. Mazinkaiser very originally, started as a upgrade unit in the Super Robot Wars series. The people at Bandai, back before it became Bandai Namco, and Ban Presto, back before, well, that was fused into Bandai Spirits, wanted an upgrade for Mazinger Z because they felt like it wasn't keeping up power, and they didn't just want Koji to be underpowered compared to, say, his other contemporaries with Great Mazinger or Grendizer. And with the help of Go Nagai, they got to design some upgrade units for both, well, for Mazinger, and then with Ken Ishikawa's help for Getter Robo. The original Shin Getter Robo and Mazinkaiser are upgrade units from Super Robot Wars that Go Nagai and Ken Ishikawa went, we designed these really good robots for a video game. Let's make stories about them now. And so then we got stories about Mazinkaiser and Shin Getter Robo, which, you love to see it. But Mazinkaiser Skull is another step from that. And it almost seems like a story more about how insane even Go Nagai can get. Because I think people, if they know Go Nagai, they only know him from one of his various sets of works. If they're mecha fans, they usually know him from the Mazingers. If they're... there's a specific type of fan that only knows him from Cutie Honey Works. And if there are people who like dark, brooding stories, they tend to know him from things like Devilman and Violence Jack. Mm-hmm. I see less people who know Go Nagai for his entire body of work compared to one facet of it. And I feel like Mazinkaiser Skull was a way for him to stretch the other facets that people don't know him about into the most popular facet. Let's be honest, Go Nagai is probably primarily known for Mazinger. Mm-hmm. In a way that allows you to see how versatile of a writer he is. Because Go Nagai is a fucking genius. Him and Ishikawa, we discussed this in a Geek Watch a while back. Him and Ishikawa saved anime, and they fully did it with a massive talent. They've got big dick talent energy.
Yeah,
and they absolutely knew how to use it. Mm-hmm. So that is why Mazinkaiser Skull as a story intrigues me so much. And of course, you hear me going on, and you already know that my rating is absolutely weeb. And so with 4 votes of weeb and none of scrub, this parliament finds Mazinkaiser Skull, the OVA, to be weeb.
Yep. And with that said, it is time for us to spin the wheel. I guarantee you, whichever one we end up picking, it's not going to be as short as this one.
Wheel of morality, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the lesson that we should learn.
The Genius Prince's Guide to Raising a Nation.
Well then.
So, so first off, let me double check to make sure that one is even one that fits our criteria. We've had a few that don't quite.
Let me check. It's 12 episodes in 2022, so it does fit.
Yep. It should be the Genius Prince's Guide to Raising a Nation Out of Debt, but I had a character limit with the wheel system that I'm using.
Yeah.
So that's...
I know the reason I skipped this though.
Why?
Because it feels too much like the realist hero who rebuilt the kingdom, or at least the concept does. So it's like, I like realist hero. I'm just going to continue watching that instead.
Well, we can go with that, or we can do a reroll.
I mean, I don't know who put this on there, but I assume somebody wants us to watch it. We can watch it.
Mm-mm. Yeah,
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I skipped it at the time it came out because I was more interested in realist hero rebuilds the kingdom.
Mm-mm. Well, we will see how it turns out in a few weeks. It could be that we get our first unanimous scrub in about a year.
That would be weird.
And I know some might say, "Wait, it's been that long since you had a scrub?" A unanimous scrub, yes. And that one was Promised Neverland.
Yep. There have been times where some of us have voted scrub just because the more we thought about it, the more we couldn't give a recommendation for it.
Yeah. As a general rule, I don't intentionally pick out bad anime just to get a scrub rating. I feel like that would be pointless.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, there's the whole thing of we don't watch shit anime, but it's more that I wouldn't feel comfortable subjecting you guys to an anime that I know is bad for several weeks at a time.
Exactly.
So I'm not going to do that. But with that said, that is going to do it for this particular episode. I will be back with doing the interview train starting tomorrow, as I mentioned on the schedule. I have been getting more and more in the habit of putting up these schedules on Sunday morning, so putting up on Saturday night. So always keep an eye out for that. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.